Shabbat Shalom. So last Shabbos I was home enjoying the newspaper. I'm a subscriber to the Wall Street Journal. Don't read too much into that. And I came across a very interesting article about a man named Christopher Paluski. Now you see, Christopher Paluski works for the Bethany Christian Adoption Services. Did you see this article? And Bethany Christian took, I think what they said is 100 or so children who had been separated from their families because of the immigration situation, and he was placing them for adoption. And because he and Bethany Christian were placing them for adoption throughout the state of Michigan, our very good friend Michael Moore decided to show up at his door and protest the fact that he was aiding and abetting the administration in carrying out that policy. Of course, the left, very upset about it, show up at their door protesting, calling him out, media, you name it. He was getting attacked from the left. What maybe they knew or maybe they didn't know is that Christopher Paluski was opposed to the administration's decision until it was ultimately changed, right? He did not support the idea of separating children from their families in the midst of this situation. And so he had actually been actively lobbying the administration and the leadership in Washington, D.C. to stop the separation of families. So what happened? The right wing came and showed up to protest that he was opposing the administration. Talk about being caught between a rock and a hard place. And so the headline of the Wall Street Journal this past Shabbat in this article, for a charity nowadays, everything's political. Boy, do I identify with that. For a charity nowadays, everything is political. What was Bethany Christian trying to do? They saw that there was a need for children to have people to help raise them, to help care for them, to help love them when they were separated from their families. So that's what they were doing. They were providing care for kids who needed help. But here also was an individual who saw something that was wrong with our government, that ultimately our governmental leaders agreed was wrong. And so he was exercising his First Amendment rights to speak out. And of course, he was criticized and attacked for that as well. For a charity nowadays, everything is political. For everything nowadays, it's political. Our teams seem to have changed in this day and age. Who are our teams anymore? It seems for most of us, our teams are either Republicans or Democrats, left or right, liberals or conservatives, and we automatically lock somebody into this box without nuance, without thought. We put them at the box. Ugh, they're liberals. Ugh, they're conservatives. And it's this team against that team, and that's it. There are a few other teams as well. Maybe it's team pro-Israel. And as long as you say that everything that Israel does is good, then you get to be part of team pro-Israel. But if you question anything that the state of Israel does, now all of a sudden you're team anti-Israel. We're locked into these strange teams. We have a renewed commitment to us against them, but all the us's and all the them's feels wrong. And so it was wrestling with this idea of who are our teams today, and how do we figure out who is us and who is them, that I came across this week's Torah portion, Parashat Rabbi. Now, Rabbi is a very long Torah portion, and there's a lot in Parashat Rabbi. And Parashat Rabbi, again, is Moses' second sermon. It's in the midst of Moses' second sermon as he's addressing the Israelites before they're going to enter the promised land without him. And Moses is giving them all of these laws and all of this advice as to what needs to happen when they enter the land of Israel and encounter all of these non-Israelites. Because you remember, for the last 40 years, it's just been the Israelites together, except for those who warred against them. And so now our ancestors are going to enter the promised land, and there they're going to encounter all of these non-Israelites. How should they behave? How should they act? How should they think in order to protect Judaism and to keep Judaism strong? And so much of what we read in this Torah portion this week is about exactly that. It's about making sure we knew who us is. Because in our Torah portion this week, not only does it say don't practice idolatry, but wherever you see idolatrous practice happening, you have to tear down those altars. You have to destroy any remnants of idolatrous practice and wipe it out. In that way, we'll make sure we know who us is and not encounter them. But also in our Torah portion this week, it speaks to a great degree about the laws of kashrut, about the system of keeping kosher. Now, this Torah portion, and really the Torah in general, does not speak as to the whys of kashrut. It speaks a lot to the how of keeping kosher. So we look to later rabbis, and especially Rabbi Moses Isserlis, who come to elucidate for us what the laws of kashrut are about. And for Rabbi Isserlis, and now we can really understand what it means to keep kosher, Rabbi Isserlis teaches us, if you can't eat with a non-Jew, and you can't drink wine with a non-Jew, guess what? You're probably not going to marry a non-Jew. Rabbi Isserlis comes to teach that the laws of kashrut are all about keeping us separate, keeping the Jewish people distinct. And in our Torah portion, we also see a lot about the Jewish holidays. We're reminded, or our ancestors are reminded, as they were preparing to enter the Promised Land, about their obligation to celebrate the holidays and to give thanks to God who brought them out of slavery and to freedom to make them a distinct, unique people. Because at the end of the day, and we know this and we feel this as part of our lives, when we celebrate different holidays than them, we're distinct, we're separate, we're unique. It's very clear, according to the Torah, who is on Team Israel and who's not. And Team Israel, according to the Torah, includes all of us here. We are on one team together. Now, I'd like to call your attention, please, to a couple different specific verses in our Torah portion this week. I'm on page 1077, 1077 in the Eitz Chaim Chumashim. And now, as a means of setting up a holy society, God, through Moses, speaks to our ancestors and talks with them a great deal about creating a just society, creating a fair society. And on page 1077, we come to learn about the sabbatical year, about the forgiveness of debt, the forgiveness of loans, in order to make sure that there's never a permanent underclass that exists among the Israelite society. And indeed, page 1077, I'm on Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 4. It says, "There shall be no needy among you, since the Lord your God will bless you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you as a hereditary portion. If you properly act in a just way, in a righteous way, there need be no needy among you." Poverty does not have to exist in a permanent way. But then, of course, our Torah goes on to say, "If, however, there is a needy person among you, one of your kinsmen, in any of your settlements in the land that the Lord your God is giving you, do not harden your heart and shut your hand against your needy kinsman." Well, this is well and good, and if we read it, it seems like we have to take care of the poor among us. It seems like a very easy socioeconomic statement about those who have to take care of those who have less. It seems pretty straightforward. But if you look at the Hebrew, and I'm on verse 7, "Ki yiyeh b'cha evyon," if there shall be poor people, me'echad achecha, from one of your brothers and sisters, be'echad sharecha be'artzecha, in one of your gates, in one of your areas in your land, do not harden your hearts against him. The language doesn't say if there's one of 250 billion people living among you, you can't let that person be poor. That's not what the Torah says. The Torah says if any of your brothers and sisters are in need, you have to take care of them. The Torah reminds us that on Team People Israel, it's not that when you care for someone who's in need, you're being really nice. And it's not that on Team People Israel, when you care for someone who's in need, you're being really charitable. It's that when one of the people Israel is in need, look at him or her as your brother or sister. This is your family. This is your mishpucha. You have to take care of them. You have to honor them. You have to elevate them. You have to respect them. You have to help provide for what they need because, as our Torah says, and as our tradition comes to teach, because tomorrow it might not be them who's in need, it might be you. And so we have to see Team People Israel as brothers and sisters, as our family. Now, of course, 2 years ago I gave that sermon, It's Time to Say Chodesh for Tikkun Olam. And I became the most popular conservative rabbi among the Orthodox community. Because you take on Tikkun Olam these days and it's tough. But the Torah is pretty clear that family comes first. And it's not just a nice thing to do, Tikkun Olam. It's just not a nice thing to care for those who are in need. That's not why we do it. We care for those who are in need as a matter of mitzvah, as a matter of commandment. And yes, we care for everybody who's in need because as the Talmud later comes to say, Mipnei darchei shalom, for the sake of peace, we have to make sure everybody has something, lest it come back to hurt the Jews. But above everybody else, we have an obligation to take care of our brothers and our sisters, the Jewish people. Charitable giving to Jews must come first. It's not PC to say, I know that. But that's what the Torah says, and that's what our tradition says. We take care of our own first. Not that we don't take care of others. We take care of our own first. That's what the Torah says. Team People Israel comes first. And I'll call your attention, you're welcome to turn with me to the very beginning of this week's Torah portion, page 1061. And on page 1061 it says, Re'eh anochi noten lifnechem hayom bracha uklala. The translation says, see, this day I set before you blessing and curse. Blessing if you obey the commandments, and curse if you don't. But again, a more careful read says, Re'eh, singular. If each of you, right? See, each of you I set before this day, blessing and curse. But the you is second person plural. Saying, see, each of you, I set before all of you, blessing and curse. Blessing and curse will not come as a result of your individual action, but as a result of your collective ability, our collective ability to follow the mitzvot. To serve God, yes, with laws like observing Shabbat and Kashrut, but also in how we care for our fellow Jews. That's how God is judging us. And as we walk 4 weeks from now to Rosh Hashanah, we remind ourselves that each of us has an obligation to Team People Israel, to this community, to our brothers and sisters. Everything is political these days. And so as we walk toward Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and people are asking, Rabbi, what are you going to be speaking about? Nothing political, please. Nothing political. I'm reminded of the joke, and I'm sure I've told it before, but a new rabbi comes to the community, and so the board calls him in, the board meeting right before his first Shabbat. And they say, Rabbi, it's going to be your first Shabbat in town. What are you going to speak about? And the rabbi says, well, of course, I'll talk about the beauty of Shabbat and celebrating Shabbat together. The president of the synagogue says, Rabbi, Michigan plays on Shabbat, Michigan State plays on Shabbat. Don't talk about Shabbos laws like that, okay? It just doesn't work for the community. So the rabbi says, okay, all right, well, maybe I'll talk about kashrut and the beauty of the laws of kosher and how it makes us feel holy by eating holy. And the president of the congregation says, Rabbi, don't talk about kashrut. We don't really keep kosher as a community. You know, we're sort of liberal. No, we're not orthodox, right? When I say liberal here, I mean not orthodox. I don't mean anything else, right? Non-orthodox Jews don't talk about kashrut. The rabbi says, okay. He thinks for a second. He says, I'll talk about the importance of daily prayer, of coming to minyan and talking to God and fulfilling our obligations each and every day. And the president of the congregation says, look, Rabbi, we work hard around here. Each and every one of us, including the retirees, are at work by 7:30 a.m. How could we possibly come to daily minyan? The rabbi's perplexed. And he says to the president of the congregation, so if I can't talk about Shabbos, and I can't talk about kashrut, and I can't talk about daily prayer, what is it you want me to talk about? president of the congregation says, well, it's easy. Talk about Judaism. On Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Rabbi Dallin and I are going to be talking about Judaism. Some of it might be ritual, and some of it might be ethical. But I assure you, none of it is political. And the reason I can say that is because on Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur, but really every day and every Shabbat, when we look at each other and when we speak to each other, it's not Team Republicans against Team Democrats. It's not even Team pro-Israel against Team anti-Israel. It's Team People Israel. We are brothers and sisters standing together looking for truth, looking to understand God's will on earth, trying to figure out together as one family how to serve God through the ritual mitzvot, and how to better care for our fellow man and our fellow woman, for our fellow Jews, how to take care of the whole world and bring peace. Because as one community and as one family, that's what God wants us to do. We're going to disagree with each other, and that's okay. And when we disagree with each other, we're going to speak respectfully about it and kindly about it. Because that's what brothers and sisters ought to do. Because on this Shabbat, as we read Parashat and we remember that word, Achichem, your brothers and sisters. Because as we come into the new year on Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur and beyond, let's remember, we're not against each other. We're a Zedek family, we're a family of Jewish Detroit, and we're a family of Jewish people working together to serve God and to care for each other. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will. And let us say together, Amen.